All right, Fact Check This podcast, and today I'm doing a little bit of an impromptu stream. I had intended to put some content out last week, and then I got sick as shit and didn't do anything. And then at the end of the week, went to my parents' house for Easter and had a good weekend with this kid right here, as well as the rest of the family, and spent some time with my nephew. My niece still haven't recovered from playing with a 4-year-old. I'm very glad that my children were that age when I was still in my 20s. I don't think I would survive a kid that small in my current physical state. But since today's episode of Peddling Fiction ended up falling through, Johnny's having some technical issues, and I also had to postpone for a few minutes because we had our second tornado of the day come rolling through. So I figured since we're not going to be able to do Peddling Fiction, but I was already geared up to sit down and do something, and I haven't done anything in a while, it would be a good time to look at an article that I've kind of had sitting on the back burner for a while, and just because I've been doing other things and haven't been as focused on covering articles in this type of a format for this year anyway. I just haven't done it, but today seems like as good a day as any. So let's go ahead and take a dive into the wokeness crisis that the left has. Why wokeness has pitched the left into crisis. Criticism is emerging from unexpected quarters over the puritanical aspects of the current wave of political correctness that puts the focus on identity and difference. Woke is not what it used to be. For some years, the term was used to describe those who are sensitive and involved in the struggle against social injustice, especially in U.S. politics, but also in the politics of other countries following suit, perhaps to a lesser degree. Woke was a label proudly worn by activists and purists of social and climate justice, from Black Lives Matter to the Me Too movement and the fight against global warming. Woke seemed to advocate a new era of equality and justice. Now, however, the concept is being turned on its head by a growing anti-woke contingent that, according to laws of action and reaction, has imbued the term with the kind of contempt that discredits those progressive causes. What began as a knee-jerk reaction from the right has now spread to encompass an element of the left that is dissatisfied with woke's current prominence. It is concerned by what they consider its excess and its lack of universality. Woke is now used as an insult. The growing criticism of the woke from some members of the left is generating tensions, as reflected by authors and philosophers such as Susan Neiman, Umut Ozkimrli, and Stephanie Rosa, not to mention the exuberance of right-wing critics within the field. And it's going to get into this a little bit, but to look at this, the left always eats its own. If you look at like the Coddling of the American Mind, where it goes through, and I know I've talked about it before, but it's an excellent book. The Coddling of the American Mind, where they go through and they look at all these different incidences on college campuses where the insanity of progressivism has these on objectively incredibly leftist progressive teachers just because they aren't progressive enough. That's what's happening with wokeness. On one side is it's not universal enough. It's not woke enough. But then it's also getting backlash on the other side because there are people that have seen it's gone too far. I don't know if any of you have paid attention, but there is a social media account on Facebook and Twitter that's it's like LGB without the TQ. It's like pushing back against a lot of the trans and other, mental disorder bullshit type stuff. There is a growing rift on the left between the people who think it's not woke enough and the people who think woke has gone too far, and the ones who are just like regular insane. It's amazing that we get to reclassify the left as like 3 different types of crazy. It's really fun to kind of watch the whole thing unravel and go nuts. By subverting the word woke, the ultra-conservative sector of the U.S. Republican Party managed to turn it into a kind of catch-all to criticize any progressive aspect of the political spectrum, be it education on racism, feminism, identity politics, or even books they consider inappropriate, explains journalist and writer Lucia Litimer, author of Ofenditos, Sombre, La Critica, anyway, today, anti-woke, especially among the U.S. right, could be considered a movement in itself. And I've seen this happen before too, where they blame the right for twisting woke into being a bad word. But objectively, if you look at what has happened to the ones who proclaim to be woke, they've twisted it themselves. They have made themselves so insane. All you have to do is just point out the obvious insanity, and then it looks objectively bad on its face. But then the left is like, oh, look, they're twisting the word. It's like, no, y'all are just fucking nuts, right? You not see this? Anyway, the response to wokeness is complex and varies according to political sensitivities. The ultra-right has long used the term to attack identity policies and environmental movements in general, painting them in terms of dictatorships. The woke dictatorship, or the environmental dictatorship, or simply the dictatorship of political correctness, also encompassing gender ideology, the gay lobby, and all things queer. In its fear-mongering, it warns of the advent of a kind of cultural Marxism which will destroy white, Christian, capitalist, heterosexual civilization. There is a manic compulsion to discover the woke everywhere. They're like hyper-motivated Pokemon hunters, says writer Gonzalo Torne, author of another fucking book, who points out that attempts at censorship have generally come from conservatives in the past. This is very interesting to look at this particular paragraph, referring to all of these things as a dictatorship. Because what's funny is when you go and you look at the coddling of the American mind and other similar things that really kind of drill in on progressivism and its effects on culture and society, it is full on dictatorship. It is the actual fascism. If you do not conform to everything they say in exactly the way they say, and you have to be willing to, on a dime, turn and conform to a brand new thing for no fucking reason other than because that's now the thing. If you cannot do all of that perfectly in lockstep with progressivism, with the woke, then you will be ostracized and you will be the enemy. And they've shown that over and over again. Dictatorship is not even a strong enough word for what it is. And you know, they talk about it like being a hyper-motivated Pokemon hunter looking for the woke and everything. It doesn't take much to see where woke progressivism has tried to get its feelers into everything. The attempts at censorship have generally come from conservatives in the past. It is simultaneously true and false. Yes, there are plenty of instances where that is the case, but there are just as many instances where the left were the ones who were doing that as well for different reasons. What you generally see is that the right-wing or conservative censorship or boycotts tend to be more effective. If you look at Bud Light, you look at there was Dick's Sporting Goods a number of years ago with their gun stuff. Like if you look, the conservative censorship and boycotts have been more effective because they actually believe in what they're doing, and they're the ones who have the money to back it. Whereas the left, progressivism can't effectively censor or boycott a thing because they can't buy into being against the thing, because tomorrow they might have to be for the thing. They never know when it's going to turn on its head, and they have no actual principle. They have no actual like standards. It's just whatever the current thing is. So So that's why they always fail at their attempts to boycott. Like, what was it? The worst fucking song on the radio at the time. Try that in a small town. Like, they attempted to like boycott that or whatever, and then just ended up making it into the like a top hit song, and forced me to have to turn off the radio for like 3 weeks because they wouldn't stop playing the fucking thing, even though it was objectively terrible. They don't have the actual conviction to do anything. That's why progressivism has been such a fucking slow bleed for the last 40 years, because they just have to like let it ride. They don't have the they don't have the faith or the standards, the moral, the principle to actually go do something about it. So they just have to like plant it like fucking weeds and let it grow over time. The U.S. anti-woke right has pushed the conservative political agenda into ever more extreme reactionary position, which have succeeded in banning sex education in schools and abortion in several states. Both of these are objectively false. In Florida, for example, the Stop Woke Act has been used by the state's conservative governor, Ron DeSantis, to try to prohibit companies and educational institutions from spreading anti-sexism and anti-racism content. Part of that act have just been declared unconstitutional after an appeals court found that they could violate freedom of speech. In a bid to become a presidential candidate, DeSantis said he was leading the war on woke, and that Florida is where woke goes to die. So-called woke capitalism has also been criticized across the political spectrum. For example, wokeness in film, with the feminism implicit in Barbie, or the choice of black actors for roles considered the domain of their white counterparts, advertising employing a more diverse range of actors, or touching on environmental concerns, at times mere greenwashing and inclusive policies in large corporations. The fact that some large corporations have adopted an agenda of inclusion and social justice, especially if it has no negative impact on economic results, is seen by some as progressive. By others, it is viewed as an advance of the radical left, and by others simply as a matter of mega companies promoting a more woke image for their own ends. In other words, pure opportunism. And that is exactly what it is pure opportunism for the woke companies. As you've seen in many instances, just a little bit of pushback and creating enough pressure will get them to change the way they are going about their business. Look at Bud Light and the way they've completely restructured their ad campaigns and everything about how they're doing business. It's also driven other beer companies to do business in a less progressive way and to get more back to basics. Like, I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but not only has Bud Light shifted and gone a lot more towards the sports fan, frat boy, rednecky type of demographic, but other beers have as well. Like, advertising across the board has pushed hard in that direction since all of the stuff with Dylan Mulvaney happened last year. It just takes a little bit of a push. And I mean, for instance, last year, Pride Month or whatever in June had I think they said like the lowest advertisements and like number of companies and stuff that were like expressly pushing that agenda since it became a thing. I don't know, 10 years or so ago. Like, they are 100% opportunistic. They don't give a shit. Again, like I was talking about with other progressives and woke stuff and leftists, they don't actually have any principle or value. They just go with whatever direction the wind is blowing. And for these woke corporations, they're not woke corporations. They're doing the thing that they think is going to be the most beneficial to them in both the short and long run for just keeping money rolling in. And as soon as they see some pushback that that's not going to be the case, they will change course quick, fast, and in a fucking hurry. They do not give a single solitary shit about any woke agenda. They just want to make fucking money. From more centrist positions, the legitimacy of feminist, LGBTQI+, and environmental struggles is recognized, but the excesses of wokeness are rejected. This is where we're getting into where it's not just right-wing pushback against wokeness, but it's starting to get pushed back across the board. So this is talking about, the more moderate centrist type position. Then we get into even the leftist position. Pushing back against this stuff. The outburst of the excesses of wokeness are rejected. Excesses such as the so-called cancel culture, the outburst of Puritanism, and the condemnation of historical injustices, which has led to a wave of attacks on statues and monuments to colonizers and slave traders. Within feminism, a gap has opened up between traditional feminists with its conservative views on the trans issue and the abolition of prostitution, and another more inclined to queer theory and the regulation of sex work. A divide apparent in some March 8th International Women's Day demonstrations. That I need to look more at that because I know there were some schisms that happened here and there, and it's International Women's Day, so I don't particularly give a shit. I don't think any of the women in my family do either, but anyway. Maybe next year I'll pay attention to it. I won't. In some quarters of the left, it is thought that mere engagement in the woke debate is to buy into the right stance on wokeness. In other quarters, and that goes back to they will always eat their own. If you do not 100% fully buy in to all of their bullshit all of the time without fail and without question, you are a fucking fascist and they have to cancel you. That's it. That's how it works. So if you look at the insanity that is wokeness and you say, hey, maybe, we should dial some of this back. This is getting a little bit out of hand. You're out. You're fucking done. They don't want you anymore. And they will go hard to remove you. So it's interesting. In other quarters, aside from wondering whether certain struggles have gone too far, it is also considered valid to call into question the essence of identity, thereby reclaiming a universalist left that focuses on the human being in general and less on certain oppressed minorities. In other words, one that deals with what we have in common rather than our differences. Oh God, how dare you think that we're all like in this together or some shit? And you have to elevate certain people above and make them the consummate victims so that you can always be, actively doing something to fight injustice. The anti-woke left. The first book that questioned identity politics from the left in Spain was La Trampa de Diversidad by Daniel Burnaby, which caused a stir by declaring that woke policies were a product of neoliberalism that fragmented the working class with its individualist focus on identity and that distracted from its struggles with symbolism far removed from anything material or labor-oriented, considered the main struggle due to its transversality. In her recent book, Debate 2024, the American philosopher Susan Neiman defends this universalist character of the left against the woke, which she sees as focused on minorities and considers a form of tribalism. Wokeness, according to Neiman, is based on emotions common to all members of the progressive left, who in general advocate the defense of the oppressed and the vindication of historical injustice. But at the same time, it is influenced by philosophical theories that are right-wing and even reactionary, tribalism, for example, or the belief that all claims to justice are covert claims to power, she says. She condemns how the right uses the caricature of wokeness to discredit the global left, to the point of almost making woke synonymous with left, hence the title of her book. The right uses woke as an insult to discredit anyone who fights racism, sexism, or homophobia. It's dangerous because those evils have yet to be fought, but the way the woke fight them often leads to outright rejection. It also leads many on the left to feel alienated because they don't agree with all of their demands, she says. I I don't even have to put commentary on that part. Like, I mean, that nails it right on the head. The current malaise reflects, to a degree, the criticism during the 20th century directed at modernity, based on the Enlightenment. The attacks came from different philosophical contingents, such as the Frankfurt School, for example, Adorno or Horkheimer, and postmodern thinkers such as the ubiquitous Foucault and Deleuze, which blamed Enlightenment for using reason to produce colonialism, domination, homogenization, destruction of nature, and even concentration camps and nuclear bombs. Enlightened humanists, says the philosopher Rosi Brandiotti, put the human center stage, but not just any human, specifically a white, European, male, heterosexual, thereby marginalizing the rest. To pursue the goals of emancipation, which are noble, Neiman proposes a return to concepts pertaining to the Enlightenment. What unites most woke individuals and post-colonialists is the rejection of any ideas derived from the Enlightenment, she says. If they were to look at the theories, they would find that some important woke concepts, such as that the world should not only be seen from European perspectives, come directly from the 18th century movement they think they despise. Neiman also criticizes the effectiveness of wokeness in developing policies that seem to get lost in symbolizing and policing language. That's another one of the interesting things, and another reason why the right tends to have more success in putting up blockades to wokeness, and I guess the right is more successful in like censorship and boycotting type stuff, is because a lot of times the policies are so bogged down in insane bullshit that there's no way they get these through. Like even a lot of times with some of these policies, like hardcore leftists will look at it and be like, this is fucking nuts. How can we pass this? And a lot of times they won't say that out loud. Like you'll hear leaks from like staffers and stuff that like, there's no way we can pass any of this shit. It's all completely gobbledygook bullshit. It's word salad nonsense. Like we're so bogged down in trying to be woke and say the right thing that we're not actually creating anything that's good and that can be successful. And I mean, that's fucking hilarious. Like, keep doing more of that, please. Neiman is not the only one to criticize the woke's hostility towards the Enlightenment. French philosopher Stéphane Rosa, in a recent La Gauche contre des Luminaires, points out that the criticism of rationalism, progressivism, and universalism is becoming increasingly fierce. Contemporary debates are heirs to this declaration of war on the Enlightenment, she writes. Rosa does not believe this opposition leads to any progress in intellectual, moral, or political emancipation, but rather represents a regression to the arguments of the old conservative and counter-revolutionary anti-Enlightenment critique. Awareness of this situation is necessary for the ideological rearmament of the left in the face of contemporary challenges. So-called cancel culture is another trigger point. Some consider it to be an attack on freedom of expression, others quite the opposite, believing it to be the voice of those who never had one, who can now express their disagreement through what they choose to consume or via social media. I would say that the criticism of the cancel culture is a smokescreen used by public figures to try to avoid the criticism that may come to them from a public that has found its voice on social networks, says Gonzalo Torne, who points out that in general, those who complain about the cancel culture usually do so paradoxically from powerful public platforms. It is playing the victim to curtail the legitimate freedom of expression of audiences, he adds on. According to the leftist critic of the woke, Umut Özkirmili, in his book Cancelled, The Left Way Back from Woke, when I try to explain wokeness to my older friends and family, I tell them to think of Stalinism. It all fits. Instead of gulags, we have social death cancellation. Of course, the old Stalinism is worse, but not much different. Özkirmili thinks that wokeness pertains to the most extreme versions of identity politics, But he also thinks that identity politics today is extreme. Wokeness is a distortion and betrayal of the original identity politics, which were open to coalition building, concerned with all sorts of inequalities, and unabashedly socialist, he says. Major social advances, such as gay marriage in some countries and other rights for the LGBTQI community, were won before the eruption of wokeness. That's an interesting point. Wokeness is, according to Özkemirli, narcissistic. It is more interested in perceived individual slights than in structural historical injustices, and prioritizes individual empowerment over systemic change and symbolic resistance over collective struggle. He also says it focuses on the specific as opposed to the universal, which, according to the woke, is restricted to the dominant classes and used as a generator of oppression. Therefore, it is argued difference must be included in order to broaden the range of human representation. And this is something that's very interesting. And yes, this is a good point. When the right does boycotting, it's less often. Like they don't boycott everything. They don't try to cancel everything. They're not all the time. So when it does happen, it's pretty concentrated on a particular thing, and it's pretty effective. And I've talked about that in a Substack, like the way to actually be effective with boycotting and stuff like that, like, you know, knowing your target, understanding how to pick a target properly, understanding how to hit the target properly, and that's the problem that like is talked about in this part is they get so bogged down in wokeness, gets so bogged down in fighting all of these little tiny injustices here and here and here and here and here, and ostracizing anybody who doesn't agree with them on every single little point all the time, that they lose their focus on the big picture and how you are actually effective in going about making change real and making change happen. And like, if I don't want to see it, I don't want to see them actually like take a step back and be like, maybe we should be less fucking insane and start actually focusing on things. I do want to see the right do that more. Like recently there was a thing that came out about Tyson Chicken was going to be hiring 12,000 immigrants, possibly 12,000 illegal immigrants, I can't remember, at some facility in like New York. And at the same time, like the same week that they were making that announcement, it was also announced that they were like shuttering a couple plants somewhere in the Midwest, and 4,000 to 6,000 people were getting laid off at those plants. And there was talk about, oh, we need to Bud Light Tyson. Like, you cannot do that. Like, whenever I talk about like picking your targets and understanding what your objectives are, like in my Substack, I talk about like there are people who want to continue to try to push to like ramp up more boycotting of Bud Light. Why? What are you going to accomplish? They fired everybody that was involved. They've completely changed the way they do their advertising and everything. Like, they stopped doing the insane bullshit that they were doing that pissed everybody off. You won. What more do you want? You cannot bankrupt Anheuser-Busch. I don't fucking care what you do. You cannot bankrupt Anheuser-Busch. Their market cap will never recover. Ever. This is their new normal. Like, the entire fucking industry has accepted that the massive step down that Bud Light took, which was anywhere from a 13 to 20% hit, that never comes back. Ever. Like, once it's been sustained for that long, as it has been, that is your new normal. They never recover that. Mission accomplished. There's no reason to continue an overt boycott. It's fucking stupid and pointless. Understand your target. Hit the target hard and fast. get the desired result, and then start to look for your next target. Tyson is not it. You cannot Bud Light Tyson. They have every fucking school contract, every fucking prison contract, and every military contract in the country. It does not matter what you do boycotting Tyson, their money is made. You cannot. It's like shooting a fucking BB gun at a howitzer or at a tank. Like, you will accomplish nothing. Pick specific targets where you can actually be effective and find ways to drive stuff home. Like social media campaigns and stuff like that would be more effective in a Tyson situation. Going after the communities where they're doing this, like targeting Tyson on a local level and creating bad publicity and stuff like that, that can actually be effective. But boycotting Tyson, you're just wasting your time. You can't effectively do that. Yeah, yes, and I'm in the same boat. I've been boycotting Bud Light for years for making shitty beer as well. I don't drink piss water. This past weekend, while I was home, I hung out with some buddies, and I drank. I had 3 not Bud Lights. What was it? I had 3 Natural Lights, and God, I can't tell you the last time I drank a light beer, and it does not agree with me. Like just 3 of them, and I had such a headache the next day. Like my body does not like cheap liquor, and anytime I drink cheap liquor, I feel terrible immediately afterwards. I like some like close to top shelf whiskeys and bourbons, and I don't. If I do drink beer, I drink like dark, rich beers. I definitely don't drink light shit. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But like, the right is starting to develop some of the problem that the left has with wokeness, in that they can't seem to figure out what their target is, and so then they end up missing the point. Like, do not fucking do that. Do not miss the point of what you're trying to accomplish. Otherwise, you turn into just woke on the right, and you won't ever accomplish anything again. Let's wrap this up real quick, and then I got to get ready to go to work. There are those who, observing the debate from a global perspective, think that the confrontation between material and identity politics generates a schism on the left that only benefits the right, sowing discord by pitting class against race, gender, or sexual orientation. This contingent believes the left must reject the confrontation. What arises is a false dilemma. Minorities are overrepresented among the working class, and conversely, the proportion of working class is higher among racial minorities. Eric Fazin, professor of sociology and gender studies at the University of Paris, told El País, "There's no reason to oppose recognition and redistribution policies." So what the left is kind of, yes, I am a big Yingling fan. What the left is kind of shittily not working their way through, but a lot of people acknowledge and understand that it is a problem, is that they have been eating their own for starting to turn their own against themselves, and they're unable to accomplish the things that they had once accomplished. Like if you go back to 2000, from 2000 to 2015, the left got a lot done, like without being insanely woke and pushing stuff like you see them psychotically pushing it now. But then somewhere, and honestly, it could be like the Trump trigger effect, TDS combined with the fact that they were already insane anyway, just pushed them all over the edge. But somewhere around 2015, they stopped being effective, and they just started being fucking insane. And from that point forward, they have only become more insane, and as they've become more insane, they have become less effective. That I know I've already mentioned it a few times, but the coddling of the American mind is a great look at that, at how the left has progressively turned on itself over and over again to the point that they have trouble accomplishing anything. And the big takeaway from that is, hey, Steve, how's it going? And the big takeaway from that is, from the right and in the middle, wherever you find yourself, but specifically from the right, you don't have to fight wokeness and progressivism really, really actively. You just have to not fuck up as they hang themselves. Keep feeding them that rope and keep letting them take themselves further over that edge. Eventually, they're going to destroy their own cause. Do I think woke insanity is actually beneficial to the right? It can be if dealt with correctly. And there have been a lot of instances over the last several years where it has not been dealt with correctly. I know I've talked about the abortion bill in Kansas and a number of other states that, following Roe versus Wade, they put these bills on the ballot and they didn't do it right. The way that the pro-life contingency in these states put it on the ballot and worded it, it made it really confusing. They put it on the ballot at the wrong time. Like, there are ways to go about doing it where the insanity of wokeness and progressivism can 100% be used to the utility of the right, but you have to understand how to do it the right way. You have to pick your spots and attack when the time is right in a manner that is effective. Like we talked about earlier in the article, the woke progressive policies and stuff that don't ever go anywhere because they get so bogged down in bullshit. The right has the same problem. They get so bogged down in being anti-woke that they forget to just put forth something that makes sense, that people are going to say, yes, that's good. Do that. And I think that's a longer conversation than what I have time for. I got to start getting ready for work. Figuring out the correct ways to go about attacking the left while also allowing them to attack each other. Like, if you see two enemies fighting with each other, the last thing you want to do is go jump in and allow them to turn their attention on you. Like, the left and woke progressivism, they have their butting heads with each other. And if you're on the right and you see them butting heads with each other and you're like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to jump in and punch both of them, now they're going to turn around and gang up on you. Stay the fuck out of it. Let them kill each other and then deal with whatever's left over at the end. Like, figuring out how to do it correctly, that's where the key is. And there are a lot of people who are doing it. And I may get back into some political bullshit later in the year. I've tried not to focus on political bullshit, but there are ways to attack this in the right method and manner that their insanity can be of benefit to the right and to people who just don't want to see woke progressivism take over the world. So we'll talk more about that in the coming months. In the meantime, I will have Don the Pleb on 2 weeks from today, as a matter of fact, April 16th. I'll be back with Don. I can't remember what the topic was now. He and I talk too much. That's the main problem. We talk too much, and then I forget what we're going to talk about the next time we're actually going to officially talk. So anyway, April 16th, live stream with Don. May try to get something out either this weekend or early next week as well, just like another solo thing or something, unless I can find somebody to pop on with me and just shoot the shit. In the meantime, hope everybody has a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and I will see you on the 16th, if not sooner. Later.